morning and welcome to The Skinny for Friday, September 20th. I'm Mitch Perry, senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, joined by independent reporter Ben Montgomery. Good morning, Ben.
Hey, good morning, Mitch. How are you?
Great. Good to see you. Our third partner, Ray Rowe, is out this week, so we won't have him, but he'll be back next week. Looking forward to the show today. Later on in the program, we're going to talk about the black vote in this year's election with a group of St. Petersburg residents. You know, on the presidential level, we've seen more reports that Donald Trump could take more of the black vote than any Republican has in recent cycles, specifically the young black male vote. And what about those black voters who choose not to vote? We'll discuss that later in the program. But first, one of the most watched political races in all of Florida this fall is the state attorney's race in Florida's 13th judicial district, which is Hillsborough County. That's where suspended Democrat Andrew Warren is attempting to win back his job this fall, but it won't be easy as he opposes Suzy Lopez, who was appointed by Ron DeSantis in August of 2022. And Suzy Lopez, welcome to The Skinny this morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Great to see you. Thank you so much.
Here.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to talking to you about the issues here in this race. So let's begin, Suzy, and obviously we'll get into the whole race and the issues that you're dealing with, dueling against Andrew Warren. But I want our listeners to get to know you a little bit, know who you are. You're a Tampa native, right? You began your legal career at the Second District Court of Appeal.
I did.
Which is, where's that at physically?
Back then, it was based in Lakeland. And
right.
So I worked in Lakeland, but I also had an opportunity to work in Tampa. And now there's a new courthouse that's going to be built over in St. Pete.
Oh, right. Exactly. Yeah, the legislature passed that a couple years ago. So then you worked and got to the state attorney's office, where you're, of course, now leading that now in 2005. And you were there for, and we'll talk about then you got to be a judge a few years ago. But so you're there for a very long time. So you know a lot about that office.
I was there for 17 years. I started out in our misdemeanor county bureau, which that's where you try DUIs, batteries, things like that. And then I worked my way up to our felony bureau, and I was there for 17 years.
And so what was it, in 2021, then Governor Ron DeSantis appointed you to be a judge here in Hillsborough County?
December of 2021, I was appointed to the county court bench. And in January of 2022, I started in county civil. That's really the people's court. It can be neighbor versus neighbor. I did a lot of landlord-tenant, small claims, really the people's court.
Yeah. How did you like that, being a judge?
It was great. I loved it. I got to really use the skills that I learned as a prosecutor in terms of interacting with people. And, a lot of times I was dealing with pro se defendants and plaintiffs. And these were just a neighbor who had a fight with a neighbor, and they went into court to work out their differences. And so it gave me an opportunity to really, be in there with the people, and I really enjoyed it. We also had a lot of litigation with attorneys as well. So it was a very diverse area, very busy, and I loved it.
Okay.
Do you have memorable cases from that period?
Oh, my goodness. There were some of the landlord-tenant issues were very interesting. And I found, if I can just talk a little bit about this, I found that during the pandemic, there were landlords who filed notices for eviction. And then something would happen and the tenant would move out, but that was still an open case. And so what I did was we would, set them on the docket, and the landlord would say, oh, this person moved out a couple years ago. But what we were finding was the tenant wasn't able to rent somewhere because all it took was a savvy landlord looking up in the system to see that there was still this open case. And the landlord would say, they moved out, we don't want to go forward. And so we were able to deal with evictions on both sides.
Right.
And so it was very interesting. There was a lot of litigation back then for windshields.
Right.
Very interesting area of the law that if your windshield breaks and you go and get it fixed and your insurance company and the business that fixed your windshield didn't agree on a price, there could be litigation about that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But
So then everything changes in August of 2022. You're still working as a judge here in Hillsborough. And then, of course, Ron DeSantis, as most of our listeners know, of course, kind of stunned the world, and he suspended Andrew Warren, the twice-elected Democrat in Hillsborough, alleging neglect of duty and incompetence. So you took over that day, and you said right when you came back, you said you were there to get the office back on track. What did you mean by that?
I just wanted to get us back to the basics, back to being prosecutors. And that's what we've done over the last 2+ years is we're back on track. We're prosecuting cases. We're getting justice for victims. And we rebuilt our relationships with our law enforcement partners.
Right. Okay. So we should pick up on that. But let's talk about, one of the things is, in addition to what Ron DeSantis, the reason why he said he suspended Andrew Warren was because Mr. Warren said he would not prosecute abortion or issues with transgender children. And one of the policies that DeSantis put also in that in his order was some of the policies that Andrew Warren was doing, one of them being about prosecuting specific nonviolent misdemeanors or arrests, such as stopping a bicyclist, i.e. Biking while black. Now, Andrew Warren says there was no blanket policy and that assistant state attorneys were required to use their judgment and discretion. Susie Lopez, on the issue of biking while black or going after those kind of cases, how are you dealing with those right now in your office?
We look at every case on a case-by-case basis. I'm not a legislator. I'm not a policymaker. It's our job to follow the law. Anybody who wants to change policy, change the law, go to Tallahassee, go to Washington. What we do is we follow the law, and we, of course, exercise our discretion every day in making filing decisions. And so we're looking at everything on a case-by-case basis and making a determination at that point.
So I'm going to get to this right now, actually, because I know I've only been to one of the forums, but I know this comes up all the time when you and Andrew Warren are debating, who should be elected on November 5th with the voters. And you talk about who's made the county safer and talk about crime and crime statistics. Yeah. And, Andrew Warren has talked about how it's a fact that when he was there, for the 6 years he was there, crime went down 32%. At the debate I attended back a few months ago, you said crime is down 15% in Hillsborough County year to date. You said that's not my statistic. That's a statistic that came from the sheriff's office.
Correct.
Last year it was down by 8%. Now, I think it's difficult I'll just say for me, I don't know about the voters out there, but the Times' Dan Sullivan wrote about this a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month or so ago, in the Tampa Bay Times. He wrote, publicly available crime statistics show that Hillsborough County's crime picture is complicated. While overall crime declined in the last decade, including the years that Warren was in office, individual crime categories varied from year to year. But Ms. Lopez, I remember watching the debate last week, the presidential debate, and you might recall if you were watching that at one point, Donald Trump had said, crime had risen since he left office and Joe Biden has been in power. And ABC's David Muir fact-checked him on that, said it wasn't true. And then there were stories afterwards saying, well, maybe it was true. And I know there's different indices right out there, the different places you can get these information, basically. And so it's very hard to, even in the national discussion about if crime has gone down or not, what have you. I think most people say it kind of has. But nevertheless, how do the voters out there in Hillsborough try to make sense of all this? Because, again, if we had Andrew here last month. We have you saying right now that it's safer now. How do we figure this out?
Mitch, what I'm talking about is what's been going on since 2022, since I've been in office. As we sit here right now, according to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, and these statistics are not my statistics, they are the sheriffs that come with statewide data. In this county, crime is down almost 15% today over this date in 2023. Overall, in 2023, crime was down 8% over 2022. I'm not talking about what happened during Mr. Warren's administration. I'm talking about what's happened since 2022. In the city of Tampa, crime is down almost 11%. That's actually a figure as of earlier this week. This date over 2023. Non-fatal shootings are down over 20% today over this time last year, and gun crime is down a little bit over 20% this time over last year. So we're moving in the right direction. I'm just making the comparisons from my during my term to another year over my term. We're holding offenders accountable, and word is getting out about that. And so as a result, crime is down. That's Sheriff Chronister and Chief Burkhaw's statistics.
Again, you're just tuning in right now. You're listening to The Skinny here on WMNF. We're speaking to Hillsborough County State Attorney Susie Lopez. She's running for, I guess, a re-election, but actually the first time she's been up for the voters in the state attorney's office, having been appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis to replace Andrew Warren, who was suspended 2 years ago.
If you don't mind, Mitch, when you talk about patching up relationships with law enforcement, what did you see as broken and in need of fixing when you got in?
Law enforcement was very demoralized for a number of years before August of 2022. And so what we did was we just rebuilt those relationships. We support law enforcement. We don't rubber stamp by any means. everything that's brought into our office by law enforcement. But what we do is we communicate. If they bring a charge and we say, this is not one that we're going to be able to go forward on, or we exercise our discretion and don't go forward on that, we pick up the phone and make a call. And we explain to them, well, this is the reason why. We're not rubber stamping anything or everything by any means, but we've got their back because they're the brave men and women who go out every day and put their lives on the line. Yesterday, of course, the sheriff's office suffered a tragedy when they lost a deputy who was on his way home from work. We stand with our law enforcement partners because we're partners. And we're partners in community safety because public safety is the number one mission of not only law enforcement, but also the state attorney's office.
Now, you mentioned discretion there, which is what Andrew Warren has said in terms of some of his policies. He said they weren't written, or I don't know if they were written down, but that he was basically, it was guidance that he gave his assistant state attorneys the option, or not the, I don't say the option, but basically, again, every case was looked at on a case-by-case basis here. So when the governor was saying that, there were certain policies that I know. Let me just ask you this. You said second day in office, you rescinded several of these policies. Mandatory minimums on felon possession cases, I think, was one there on that. Andrew Warren said, was on our show last month. He said, you're seeing now people for nonviolent offenses get jail and prison time because talking about focuses on low-level crimes. You're seeing people who pose a threat to the community not getting prison time when they would have under my regime. What do you say to that?
I respectfully disagree with that. Every crime is a priority because someone who is a business owner, and I've told this story this week already. Someone who's a business owner, if they have someone who's trespassing on their business, that was a crime that was really not prosecuted previously. But I met with some business owners early in my term. And I met with a man who has a grocery store in Town and Country. And every day in the afternoon, there was a woman who came and slept outside of his store. And as a result, people didn't come into his business after 3 o'clock, which is when she would go to take a nap outside of his store. And she needed to not be there, quite frankly, because it was affecting his business. That was a very important crime to him. That was a priority in his life, in his business. It affected his livelihood. Whereas, of course, I meet with families who've lost somebody as a result of a crime in Hillsborough County, going back crimes as far as 2018. I've met with over 135 families at this point. That, of course, is the crime that's going to be the most important to them. We, this week alone, had 2 homicides go to trial, and we got verdicts as guilty as charged. The defendants rejected the offers that they were made. They chose to go to trial, and so now they're going to be facing one a life sentence. They're both facing life sentences. And so every crime is a priority. And before the show, we were talking about in the state attorney's office, we have the misdemeanor and juvenile prosecutors all the way up to our major crimes division. So we have attorneys at every level of experience to prosecute every level of crime.
Let's get, I've got all these different questions here, but I want to make sure to get these. We've got you here till the bottom of the hour, about 11 minutes or so left to go here. So, now you have charged juveniles as adults for crimes other than homicide. Is that correct?
In certain situations, what we do when a juvenile commits a crime, especially a crime with a gun, we look at that juvenile. We look at what their record is, and we make that determination again on a case-by-case basis. There's no one-size-fits-all, especially when it comes to juvenile crime. However, if a juvenile uses a gun to kill someone, we take that very seriously. That's an adult decision, and they're going to be facing adult consequences.
And I think most people would understand that. But in terms of, again, this has been an issue for a long time in terms of juveniles and keeping them in the juvenile justice system, whether, prosecuting them as an adult. But so it is, sometimes it can be more than just a gun crime that you do prosecute those cases.
It can be, but there's no one size fits all, but it's most often where we see it is when a juvenile uses a gun and shoot someone in the commission of a crime, whether that person is injured or killed.
So let's talk about this big overhang issue of this election right now, which is, of course, Mr. Warren is, and also similarly in Orange and Osceola counties, there was another suspended state attorney, Monique Worrell, who's also trying to run to get back her job. So there is thoughts from some folks. They don't know if Andrew Warren, if he were to win this election in November 5th, would Ron DeSantis suspend him? Ron DeSantis was here in town yesterday, or in Pinellas Park, and I actually was there, and I asked him that question. I said, vote by mail ballots are starting to go out right now. What do you tell the voters of Hillsborough County and Orange and Osceola counties if the vote comes in and Andrew Warren wins and or Monique Worrell wins? Will you overturn the popular will of the voters? He did not answer that question. He talked a lot about how basically made a good, want to argue that it's better right now for Hillsborough, residents that you're in there. Then we know that's where he's at. Let me ask you this, Suzy Lopez, and that was there was some audio taken from a fundraising call on Twitter, I guess Twitter Spaces, which is I'm not too familiar with. I know that Ron DeSantis did that when he opened up his campaign a couple years ago. Where there was a supporter of you that said that the most likely situations if Andrew Warren was to defeat you in November, that he would be, quote, fired by DeSantis. Do you have any thoughts about that?
That is between Mr. Warren and Governor DeSantis. My job is to run the state attorney's office and keep Hillsborough County safe. Anything that's going on in the courts, anything that's going on with Mr. Warren and the governor, that's their business. My business is to run the state attorney's office, work with our law enforcement partners, our community partners, and keep Hillsborough County safe. That's my job.
If Andrew Warren won and this played out like it did before, and he's evicted by Governor DeSantis, and you're again appointed to take that position, would you take it? Would you step in once again? And
I mean, that's a heck of a hypothetical, Ben. I really have no idea.
I don't think it's that big of a stretch, though, to see this playing out the same way. If Andrew Warren wins, there's every indication to suggest that Ron DeSantis will again say he's not fit to serve and look for a replacement. And you're right there. You've been in the role for a long while. But I'm asking, because that's ultimately your decision. Yeah. I mean, if you're appointed, it's still your decision. Do you, again, step in to serve?
I answered a call to serve my community, to serve my hometown. What the governor decides to do is what the governor's going to do. I answered the call to serve my hometown, and I believe that Hillsborough County is safer than it was 25 months ago.
I asked this of Andrew when he was here last month. I'll ask this of you, and because I was saying when I saw him on social media, he gets some not very nice tweets coming back at him. What's it been like for you on a personal level? Because this is such an emotionally intense issue. What has been since the day it happened a couple of years ago. Have people been, rude at all to you out there in the community, or is it all, sweetness out there?
Mitch, I've been called some of the nastiest things by Mr. Warren that I can ever imagine. I've been called a criminal. I've been called a joke, unqualified. That's really nasty. I'm a human being. But at the end of the day, I have a job to do, and that job is to lead 320 dedicated men and women. We have support staff. We have victim advocates. We have attorneys. We have investigators. It's my job to lead them, and we've done a good job. We've kept Hillsborough County safe. We've rebuilt relationships. We've supported victims, and we've held offenders accountable to keep our community safe. So that's what my job is to do.
Yeah. So we're speaking with Hillsborough County State Attorney Suzy Lopez, the Republican running for the state attorney's office on November 5th. Again, vote by mail ballots have been going out pretty soon. They've all been mailed out to overseas and military voters by tomorrow. By the way, October 7th is the date to register if you haven't voted to register to vote yet. A couple other things we've got here. We've got about 5-6 more minutes left with you here. On the day that you took office was also the same day that Andrew Warren's when Andrew Warren was suspended. He held a press conference later that day where he noted that his conviction review unit had come to the conclusion after an investigation that Robert Dubois should be exonerated after serving 37 years in prison because they had concluded that he had not committed the murder of 19-year-old Barbara Graham in 1983. The review unit found that the DNA matched 2 other men already in prison for different murder. But I believe you've cast doubt on his innocence. Dubois was recently on the Wavemaker show here in MNF, and he said that if you were in office at the beginning of that investigation, quote, I would say I would probably be dying there. Even though they found the people who really did it, she still sticks to her guns. What's your thoughts about the whole Robert Dubois case?
That exoneration occurred in 2020. I had nothing to do with that exoneration. What I can tell you is the conviction review unit, contrary to popular belief, is actually alive and well at the state attorney's office. In the 25 months that I've been in office, we've released 3 men from either incredibly lengthy or life prison sentences. We've done it without a press conference. We've done it without fanfare because we did it because it was the right thing to do. And so...
Well, why didn't you do a press conference? I think that'd be pretty important to know that happened, actually. Justice got served there.
Does that have to do with the relationship with law enforcement?
No, and we spoke with law enforcement with each of those 3 cases. We consulted with everybody who was involved in the investigation of those cases, the victims, as well as the prosecutors if they were still around. But we spoke with everybody who was involved and explained our position, and they understood. It wasn't our story to tell, though. These are three gentlemen who, through the Conviction Review Unit, sent in petitions, and we release them because we do the right thing, and we don't need an audience or a press conference to do that. If they chose to tell their stories, that's up to them. But they are currently living in peace, and they've gotten on with their lives because we felt that it was appropriate and that was the right thing to do. People actually get out of jail all the time. I'll give you an example. If we have someone charged with a drug case and we find out that it actually wasn't a drug, we let them out of prison. We let them out of jail. We don't have a press conference for that. So we just did the right thing, but the Conviction Review Unit is still alive and well.
That's good to know. That's important to know. Going back for one question on Dubois' case, though, I know Mark Ober obviously was the man there for many years there, and you worked under him. I believe he has said that he has questions there. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, though, in terms of what you know about that case. Do you have any qualms about him being released?
I think it's important to talk to everybody who's involved, which is what we did when we released these three. And these were three unrelated cases. They weren't co-defendants or anything like that. I think it's important to talk to everybody involved. I think it's important to talk to the investigating agency. In the Grahams and Lansing cases, that was the Tampa Police Department. I think it's just important to talk to everybody and make sure that no stone is left unturned. But that happened well before I came into office. And so what I concentrate on is what's happened in the office since August the 4th of 2022. And we've released three people from the Florida State Prison.
Are you familiar with the term a trial tax?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So I've understood that in your office you seek significantly higher criminal sentences when a defendant goes to trial as opposed to how much he or she would get in a plea deal. Is that common in the office there?
Ultimately, after a trial, the person or body who is imposing that sentence is the judge. It is not the jury. It is not the state attorney's office. There are times when we have a case where we know what our I can't think of the right word right now, but we know that we may have issues with the case. And so we may make an offer of, I'll just throw out a number, 15 years in the Florida State Prison. But if someone chooses to go to trial and they go to trial on a first-degree murder, the judge has absolutely no discretion than to sentence them to life in prison. And so there are just opportunities that we have to make offers, and we do, but we can't convince a defendant to take that offer. Sometimes we lose at trial, sometimes we win at trial. But like I mentioned earlier, we had two people go to trial this week. They were both made offers. They rejected them. And so therefore, one of them is serving a mandatory life sentence. The other one has yet to be sentenced.
This is a question from a listener about the office, and it says, ask, how often are alternative consequences, such as rehab assistance, other health services employed or sought after before full prosecuting and sentencing?
We have diversion programs that are wonderful. We have mental health court. We have a pretrial intervention court that's been in pretrial intervention program, that's been in existence now for decades. And so if someone is eligible for those programs, we have an amazing veterans treatment court. I encourage people to go and learn about it. It's the second in the country, but it's used as the benchmark now all across the country because we have so many veterans in our community. We have a lot of diversion programs, and if someone is eligible, we can lead a horse to water. You understand that, but we have a lot of great drug court. We have a great drug court where we're graduating a lot of people who are out there and they're leading clean, sober lives as a result of going through our drug court as well.
On the same ballot, the voters will be voting on the state attorney's race is also Amendment 4, which would repeal the state's ban on abortions after 6 weeks in most cases and restore it to what it was in 2022, roughly 24 weeks. Can you tell us how you'll be voting on that measure?
We're going to let the voters decide. As the state attorney, that's not my lane. We follow the law, whatever it is that the voters decide.
Understood. And then how about this? And maybe you'll have the same comment about this, but also I think that prosecutors have a lot of weighted interest on this one. That's Amendment 3, which would legalize recreational cannabis.
We're going to let the voters decide. It's up to the voters, and we'll follow the law, whatever it is that comes down.
What's the kind of the prosecution these days on marijuana cases?
I mean, It depends. If someone has a grow house, that of course is going to be a crime. That is still illegal. But unless and until the legislature, the voters make a decision, or when they make a decision on November 5th, we will follow the law, whatever it is. That's our job. We don't get to pick and choose, and we certainly don't get to legislate.
Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood has brought back the perp walk for kids who make threats about shooting up their school as a response to an uptick in this number of threats. I just heard on the radio this morning, Sheriff Grady Judd, closer to us in Polk County, has said there's an uptick there as well, and they're dealing with how to handle these kids who are making these threats. I imagine your office has probably gotten a few of these. How's that being treated right now?
Ben, it's being treated seriously. There is no such thing as a joke or a hoax. I'm comfortable saying that we're all old enough to remember Columbine. Of course, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, Sandy Hook. But for the grace of God go I, we have not had that in Hillsborough County. Every time something is posted or even a post is shared, we take that seriously. We work with the school system, the state attorney's office, and our law enforcement partners. We look at this as with a 360-degree approach. What's going on with this student? Do they have access to firearms? Do they have a history of violence? But every one of these threats is investigated because we don't know when a threat's going to become reality. And so there are consequences that juveniles are going to have to face, that students are going to have to face. We saw what happened at Newsom last week.
What happened in Newsom last week?
I'm sorry. At Newsom last week, there was a written threat it's called a written threat to kill or a written threat to conduct a mass shooting. That is actually a crime that was posted. And so as a result, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office had to go out to Newsom High School and investigate and see what was going on. This is all coming in the wake of, and I think it's been about 3.5 weeks ago.
The Georgia case.
In Georgia. And what we often see after something like a Georgia situation, or what we see like in Parkland, we see copycats. And so we don't know whether it's going to be real or what someone thinks is funny, because pretty much every kid in every high school or even middle school has the most powerful tool in their hand, and that's their cell phone. They can text, they can tweet, they can post, they can do any number of things, and they don't realize the consequences. So what we're encouraging parents to do, talk to your kids. Let them know this is some serious business, and we take it very seriously, and parents should, and the school system and our law enforcement partners absolutely do too.
All right.
Does there seem to be an uptick, or are we?
There has been. I don't want to call it a copycat syndrome, but oftentimes in the wake of something like Georgia, we do see this, and so it's kept our law enforcement partners and school board and school partners very busy in the last 3 weeks.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Hillsborough County State Attorney Susie Lopez, thank you so much for coming into the skinny here in WMNF.
Thanks.
All right. Appreciate that. Susie Lopez, again, she's on the ballot on November 5th against Andrew Warren, and it's going to be a major election here in Hillsborough, and we'll be following over the next 6 weeks or so. Okay, we're going to change gears right now, and I think we don't have all four. We have a couple of our guests on, two of our guests on. So we're going to talk now about black men and voting. Earlier this week at the Carter G. Woodson African American Museum in St. Petersburg, a coalition called the Power of the Vote Collective held a forum with the topic being, quote, a candid conversation on why black men do and don't vote. And I saw parts of that discussion, and I thought we'd continue the conversation by bringing some of the panelists on with us today. And so we've invited four of the panelists on, and I think we have two gentlemen on right now, and I can't literally see the computer right now. So I'm hoping the guys out there, they can go ahead and just introduce themselves to start out with here. Okay, who do we have here on the line right now?
How you doing? My name is Tony Williams, community advocate and the owner of Get Zot Media.
Tony, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
This is Reverend Kenny Irby. I'm the Faith and Community Justice Liaison for the City of St. Petersburg.
As well as the pastor at Historic Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church and a Men in the Making, a role modeling and monitoring program. Okay, so Reverend Irby and also Tony Williams, great to have you on with us. We're hoping to get a couple more of our guests on the show, but we'll start with you guys here. Good morning. A good deal of this conversation was led by stats that Gypsy Gallardo with Power Broker Magazine uncovered when it came to black male voters compared to the rest of the electorate. She found that through statistics here, men were 38% of African-American people who voted in the 2020 election. That's because men have had lower registration and lower turnout rates compared with black women and other groups. And among all races, young Americans tend to vote at lower rates than their elders, but the age difference is bigger for black voters. So on that question, guys, start with you, Reverend Irby. Any initial thoughts about why that is?
Well, I think there are a couple of thoughts that are definitely need to be taken under consideration. The fact that there are so many young men in our community that feel disenfranchised is a part of that. And then secondly, the huge incarceration reality with African American men and the challenges of voting upon returning as citizens in the community. And that's been a long-standing reality in the African American community, but we're working really hard to make sure that folks can reclaim their voting possibilities, and also to make sure that the next and succeeding generations understand the importance of participating in this civic responsibility.
What are your thoughts, Tony?
I agree 100%. I think the most important thing that we look at is a lot of us as Black men were targeted and hit with felons at a young age. So you do have a block of men out there that don't actually even know they can vote. If you think about it, some of these guys may have gotten felonies when they were in their early 20s, and now they're in their 30s, and they haven't done the research, or they just don't know the information to know that they actually have the right to vote, or that they can reclaim their voting rights. So I think that plays a big part in it, and I agree with the Reverend.
Yeah, and Gypsy Gallardo has found that it's an estimated 8,600 Black men in Pinellas that are disenfranchised right now due to a prior felony conviction. I want to ask you, gentlemen, about the Democratic Party. Right now, they're experiencing a decline in support among younger Black men, with 1/4 of them leaning towards Donald Trump for president, according to a poll released last Friday by the NAACP. The overall results showed a 63% favor for Kamala Harris over Trump's 13% among, let's see here. Anyway, I'm getting the numbers. The gender disparity is noticeable. While support for Harris among Black women remains strong at 67%, it falls to 49% among Black men under the age of 50. Now, I know some of this is young men overall apparently are skewing more Republican here. We're seeing that in some of these other polls. But obviously, it's been discussed a bit. Donald Trump trying to make some more inroads. I remember Byron Donalds, the Republican congressman from Fort Myers area, said a few months ago, when Joe Biden was still running, that he thought, Donald Trump could get 25% of the Black vote. I think people, did not take that too seriously. But we've seen a lot of these polls, especially with young Black men, looking towards Trump. We see it with the Latinos as well. But Reverend Irby, any thoughts about that? We're seeing these stats.
Well, I think that's a definite reality that we have to deal with. The challenge, the disillusionment and concern that many African American men have about being able to participate in the society, to have jobs, and to be upwardly mobile and be able to provide for their family, is the economic reality that some, I happen to believe, misled believe that Donald Trump's business profile will help them move forward. And the Democratic Party needs to make more clear and definitive instruction and narratives about the job opportunities and the economic benefits that will happen from Kamala Harris as a president of the United States.
Tony Williams, your thoughts about this thing with Trump getting some more love from the Black community, or at least younger male voters?
Well, I think in general, and maybe the temperament has changed since the new electoral as far as Kamala, but I think in general, the Democratic Party has been running their campaign off of scare tactics, and I think the Republican Party is running their campaign more off of propaganda. And it's just the fact that the propaganda is winning with the social media, with the entire Twitter platform is just too bad. Kamala in the and the Democrats, I think the propaganda is winning versus the scare tactics.
Do you think the bravado Trump displays appeals to young Black men?
Yes and no. And I think it's very disrespectful for myself being a convicted felon and being a person that served 10 years in prison, in federal prison, I just find it very disrespectful to equate his charges to anyone that's been to prison or anyone that's been to jail, because I mean the man's never been in handcuffs. So you can't say, "Oh, his bravado, he's a felon like us." That's that's a very disrespectful stance to actually take.
Yeah.
I think I would add on to Anthony's acknowledgement there. It's that one of the challenges that we have is that there's so many young men that don't understand their history and don't understand Donald Trump's true negative contributions to the value and the integrity of African Americans. And they're operating in this space of bravado, machismo, and bling and financial wealth. And so he's seen on that level and not acknowledged by the character of the individual.
Hey, if you're just tuning in right now, it's 11:41. You're listening to The Skinny here on WMNF. Mitch Perry with Ben Montgomery. We're speaking with the Reverend Kenny Irby and also community activist Tony Williams, both out of St. Petersburg, about the issue of black men voting and why in some cases they don't vote as much as in other groups. There's a discussion earlier this week in St. Petersburg about this. Tony, picking up what you just talked about, the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris was in front of the National Association of Black Journalists on Tuesday, and when she was asked what her economic message was to black men, she said, and I'm quoting here, quote, "I think it's very important to not operate from the assumption that black men are in anybody's pocket." She said, "Black men are like any other voting group. You've got to earn their vote. So I'm working to earn the vote, not assuming I'm going to have it because I am black, but because the policies and the perspective that I have understands what we must do to recognize the needs of all communities. And I intend to be a president for all people." Now, I read that Eugene Daniels, a reporter from Politico, who's one of the three journalists who was interviewing her, who's covered her very closely as her time as vice president, he said that's not a new take from Harris at all. It's just that we're all paying attention to her now, obviously, that she's running for president, that she has said that for years. But Tony, beginning with you, I mean, do you appreciate that comment? Because, again, that is something that I've heard for like forever, which is that the Democratic Party just basically does take the black vote for granted.
Well, I would challenge, and as I said this at the panel, other than that statement, I haven't heard any other language by any candidate that was directed towards black men, period. I felt like no one had in their campaigns any type of language or sustainable things that they were going to do for black men. None of the policies state anything that they're going to do specifically for black men. So I appreciate the statement, but I think that was maybe the first direct address to black men. Trump hasn't done it. No one has done it. The Democrats have actually, and Republicans have actually walked over, having language in their policies for black men.
I understand we have Jameson Carnegie on the line now with us. Jameson, are you there? Jameson?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So Jameson, who currently works in Kathy Castor's St. Petersburg district office, and you are by far the youngest one of our panel members here. So want to ask you kind of the overall question, Jameson, because, again, talking about the black male vote and sticking with Donald Trump for a minute, you obviously hang with probably, I would think, younger people, as you are a 26-year-old man yourself. What do you hear from your friends and colleagues when you do talk about politics? I mean, I know, you work for a Democratic representative, so I'm sure you maybe have more Democratic friends, but then again, I don't want to assume anything. So what's your thoughts about that whole issue with maybe more younger black men looking at the Republican Party here, and specifically Donald Trump?
Well, thank you for that great question, and I'll hit on the thing that I definitely have friends on both sides of the aisle, so it's not just Democratic based. Really, I think to Tony's statement, how are they getting the black vote? Like, what are Trump saying? What is the Republican Party or MAGA saying? And then also what are the Democrats saying? And I think a lot of times when me and my friends are having those conversations, it's really more so, they look at some of like the funny nuances that Trump says. But then, when we have those conversations, like, well, let's get really down to the policies and how have those policies shaped, what you've been able to do as a black man, or what he wants to do for the black party. When they talk about what he wants to bring back stop and frisk, right? Or the police immunity, when we look at all those things, well, historically, how has that affected black men or the black community? So, those are the conversations that we have on both sides of the aisle. We really kind of come, we toy with like, hey, so why are you supporting them? We really try to understand both sides, but also educate each other. So that's really what we do as friends.
I have this quote here. I want to get all three of your thoughts about this. Mondale Robinson, he's the founder of the Black Male Voter Project. He told ABC News in June that it's ineffective campaign messaging and stalled delivery of campaign promises that affect voter turnout among the black male voting bloc. He said, quote, "There's no apathy in black men. There's a level of antipathy. Antipathy is a whole different emotion. You hate what politics is and does because you've not seen the growth or benefit of it. Black men are not better off because of politics." That's what Mondale Robinson said. Reverend Irby, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that is a very real reality that we are faced with, and we have to make sure that we're not just following, in Tony's comment, the propaganda, but we're really looking at programming and policy that will benefit black men and the larger community at large in terms of their opportunities and their abilities to contribute and to advance in the contemporary society.
Tony, you want to weigh in?
I think the uninterest in voting, if you want to, just go directly to the point, we can bring it directly to a local level.
Yeah, let's do it.
In St. Petersburg, I personally feel if we go to the last 10 fiscal years, I think our leadership in St. Petersburg has not done a great job for us, our black community. And we need to work on that.
And is that still the case right now with Mayor Welch, in your opinion?
I've challenged people and I've asked, I would like a list. What did we actually get? And it's not with Mayor Welch. That's why I said 10 fiscal years, because it goes back to the prior administration also.
Sure.
So I've in my mind and what I've seen, I think the only thing that the black community got out of this was a mural on the 22nd Street on the Deuces. This is the only thing that the black community got. Other than that, we have nothing sustainable. Yes, we are working on projects, but in 10 years, we should have sustainable things happening to encourage people to come back out and vote for you.
We are speaking right now.
And that's about the election up. And one of the things we talked about on Tuesday night was voting up and down the ballot, not just in the general election for the president, but voting for the judges and city council members and mayor, et cetera, school board members, to make sure that the people that we put in place have the African-American black community as a priority in their agenda, and that they're held accountable to include and create opportunities across the board.
We are speaking about black men and the vote here. Of course, we're 6.5 weeks away from the election. And not only as the gentlemen have said here, is it a big federal election here with president, U.S. Senate, but we've got a lot of local races, county commission, school board. And in St. Petersburg, there's several city council races on the ballot for the first time ever, actually, right? I believe that St. Pete is actually voting now in election year. They changed the voting from odd years now to even years here. Our guests are right now on the line, the Reverend Kenny Irby, also Jameson Carnegie, and community activist Tony Williams, all out of St. Petersburg. They were part of a conversation, a community conversation earlier this week, talking about this issue, and we're talking about it right now here on WMNF about this. By the way, guys, your thoughts about we've got and Tony, if I could ask, you talked about you had spent time in prison, and I trust that, I don't know, you got your voting rights back, have you, at this point?
Absolutely. I voted in the 2016 election.
Okay, great. And obviously we know that has been a factor in terms of more black men not getting the opportunity to vote. We thought that would happen after Amendment 4 in 2018. A little thing called the Florida legislature kind of changed that up in the months after that right now in terms of having to pay all fines and fees, what have you. By the way, there's talk now finally maybe of the Division of Elections getting a centralized database so that people can understand how much they actually owe, which the legislature has never implemented that. So it's led to a lot of confusion. We all know that. But here are remaining, we've got a couple of other statewide issues here, both Amendments 3 and 4. And is it, I'd love to hear all three of your guys' thoughts about both those measures and how, does it move the black community at all in terms of your discussions with your friends, have you, when it comes to legalizing cannabis here in the state of Florida, as well as abortion rights. Pick it up, guys.
I'll jump in first, and I think amongst my friends and some of the the older individuals that I've spoke with, I think legalizing marijuana, I think it's a huge thing here. I mean, we have a lot of petty crimes of people with very low getting long jail sentences for having very minimal amounts of marijuana on them. So I think, amongst the younger individuals are like, hey, we need to pass this, because also we see people that are capitalizing on, dispensaries and having all these things. But then we also have individuals in jails that weren't trying to just, sell it or distribute it or do all these, different things. So I think if we do go to pass, legalize marijuana, I think, we should pass a comprehensive bill. And then also as a state, go back and look at a lot of those small misdemeanor charges that those people are selling, that are serving longer times and, kind of make sure we're doing the right thing by putting them back into the system, creating whether in prison education programs that allow for them as they progress out of jail to be able to get their voter rights back, to be able to re-enter civilization just a little bit easier, so there's those less hurdles to drop through. So I think amongst the younger crowd, it's a very big push that we should as far as like the abortion rights. That is also a huge thing amongst, the younger individuals, not only just black males, but also throughout all communities, whether it's LGBTQ+, whether it's the white communities, whether it's black, that is a universal thing that I know a lot of the younger individuals speaking being 26 years old, that a lot of my colleagues and other individuals feel that are very important. It's not only just about, well, I don't want this pregnancy. It's also a health issue for a lot of women.
The reality, women's health should be determined by the individual, the woman and their doctors, not the government, to make those kinds of decisions. The overturning of Roe v. Wade is a huge, major issue in the community, in St. Petersburg and in the nation abroad. And as it relates to marijuana, I agree with Jameson completely. The young people see the inequity in how the system is gamed, and it's to their disadvantage.
By the way, Tony, go ahead. Yeah.
For me, I don't feel like anyone should have the right to tell a woman to do what to do with their body. And as far as Amendment 3, I'm more looking forward of us as the black community getting in on as far as the financial sector of it. We've done the research. Before 3 years ago, it costed $50,000 a non-refundable application fee to get a dispensary. That price has went from $50,000 to $250,000,
right? And
now I think it's $1.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
And even with Amendment 3, how do we get in the game? How do we get our own dispensaries when it's a $1 million application fee that can be denied? To go deeper than that, how do we get into the game as growers?
Right.
So it's great that we vote on these amendments, but I always go back to the art of negotiations. And I think that us as a community, especially in St. Petersburg, we need to negotiate what we put in our eggs in the basket on. We need to negotiate a lot better.
I think that there is supposed to be this new license going to a black farmer eventually. I think it's finally going to happen this year. There's supposed to be 23 new licenses for people to get into the marijuana business from the Department of Health. And what you talk about, Tony, is something that's interesting because many other states, certainly in my home California and the Bay Area specifically, a lot of those places have made sure to allow people who have been most disaffected disproportionately by the war on drugs, quite frankly, to get a head start in the game of, in the case of legalizing cannabis. We've seen that in a lot of places around the country. We have really not seen that at all here in Florida. But again, a lot of people will tell you there's been so many problems, issues in terms of how medical marijuana has developed in the state in terms of fairness for folks.
Absolutely. That's all about access to opportunities. And that's what will have an appreciable impact on the elections and involvement of black men, is to see that they're being given pathways to grow and to contribute and engage in this great society.
Dr. Irby sorry, go ahead, sir.
It's funny that you mentioned California, and I have a great example. because I'm from St. Petersburg, but I was actually raised in California in LA, and I went to high school in LA. And one of my friends, which is a rapper by the name of Corrupt, and if anybody's in the marijuana industry, he was branded a marijuana brand called Moon Rock. And when my conversation with him 4 years ago, the man told me he made more money in the marijuana industry than he ever made doing music. So this is the type of funds that we're looking at.
Dr. Irby has for more than a decade run a program called The Right Field. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir, but this has been a program that partners young men with mentors to sort of help along with writing, but also in life. From what I've seen from the outside, it's a great and interesting program. I wonder if you've noticed if kids have changed from when you first started to now, and maybe what some of those differences are.
No, that's a great point. Point of clarification, I founded The Right Field at the Poynter Institute before I left, and then we moved forward for the last 10 years with a program called Men in the Making, Men and Women in the Making. It's a 40-year endeavor, ministry, my wife and I. But in that program, to answer your question, absolutely, we've seen the consciousness and concern of the young people. To use Tony's benchmark in the last 10 years, they're much more civically minded, interested in being contributors, and they're more important on impacting and helping others than the selfish representation that we found in the Republican Party being all about me and not about we.
Interesting. We just have a couple minutes left to go. We've got a couple callers here, guys. So let's bring up some of our listeners here who want to contribute to the conversation. We've got Bobby from Bradenton on. Bobby, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me okay, gentlemen?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, as a younger gentleman, I believe that young black men are moving towards President Donald Trump because they've seen the results of his policies from 2016 to 2020. And they've seen the policies of the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration of the last 4 years. And black men do not like what they see. They understand that the Kamala Harris regime has done a lot of horrible things to black people in California. And black men do not want to see that happen to them. What they've done in California, Chicago, New York, it's really, really bad.
Bobby, are you talking about her record as a DA in San Francisco and Attorney General in California?
That is correct, sir.
In terms of
she put black people in jail just for having their children be truant. And she was raising money off of putting black people in jail for California. She has a horrible, terrible history in California, and she'll do the same thing that she's been doing with Joe Biden, and she'll do that to the entire country, and we do not want to see that.
Okay, Bobby, thank you for the phone call. Anybody want to wait?
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So, if you bake cakes, don't you want to be good at what you do? As a convicted felon, I don't see no problem with her being a good prosecutor. If she didn't arrest anyone, she didn't put anyone in handcuffs. She only prosecuted the cases that came across her desk. And also, with all of that being said, I can take all of that in consideration. But I did make the statement, and I will say it again. After watching what recently went on with Tyreek Hill, I could not vote for anyone that will give police immunity right now.
Yeah, that was a big issue, by the way, after George Floyd, but it kind of died in Congress.
I'll take a stab at his comments, and I think that's something that is also a mixed message. And I think Tony did a great job. She only prosecuted what came across her desk. I mean, even when we kind of look at when her as a DA, she had a very successful rate of crime was down. She implemented a lot of good programs that helps reduce the recidivism rates, and then also just the pathways out and back. Like I keep talking about, coming back into civilization or reestablishing yourself into the community is a big thing. She was one of the leading DAs. She did an awesome job, a lot of people, some people have the idea, oh, she incarcerated so many African American men. But when we go back and look at how many of those were actually put into jail, and then also how many were given a second chance, I think, once we start to look at more of those issues and what she really did, you'll see that it was more positive.
Thank you for that. That was Jameson Carnegie. We're speaking with the Reverend Kenny Irby and Tony Williams, a community activist, all from St. Petersburg, talking about the discussion about black men, the vote. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate that. Appreciate the conversation. That's going to be it for us here on The Skinny. We also want to thank Hillsborough County State Attorney Susie Lopez for being on the show. Ben, thank you so much. I want to thank Skip Sassy for engineering, of course, Irene Matthews for taking the phone calls. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Thank you so much for listening. You're listening to WMNF Tampa 88.5 FM.